Welcome everyone. The webinar will begin shortly and will be recorded. Connect with the campaign for grade level reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. Please use hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learn from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Once again, we would love to connect. So on Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. Okay, welcome again everyone to today's webinar. My name is Sarita Sanchez and I'll be behind the scenes helping to produce this conversation. I have just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself. So please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure to select both panelists and attendees when responding so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage you to post any questions that you may have during the conversation into the Q&A box. Additionally, this webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording, as well as any resources that you see shared as links in the chat, will be compiled and shared in a follow-up email to all who registered. Lastly, we'll be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during closing and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. Additionally, I would like to call your attention to our upcoming GLR Learning Tuesdays webinars. Next week on April 19th, we have another exciting doubleheader, starting with a funder to funder conversation at 12:30 Eastern Time, focused on building hope and opportunity, philanthropy's role in building children's savings accounts. Later that day, we will have a session focused on taking stock and looking forward, principles on K through third learning. And then we'll invite you again to wrap up the month of April with a session focused on starting early, state investment that supports children's language and literacy development, again at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Lastly, I would just like to call your attention to join us for one of our Housing as a Platform webinars. This upcoming session will be on Wednesday, April 20th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, featuring the Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority and their engagement with parents as teachers. Registration and more information for these sessions will be posted in the chat box now, and we hope you can join us. Joining you now is Hattie Miles-Polka, consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Sierra. I'm Hattie. Welcome to each and every single one of you, and thank you for joining us for today's GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar, Join the Movement, Activating Your Parent Village. Adequate supports for parents and guardians have long been a challenge in this nation, yet the pandemic has created an even greater need for those supports because of the increased challenges that parents and guardians have faced over the last few years and that they continue to encounter as we move forward. In November, we heard from Yolie Flores and Dr. Suskind in our GLR Learning Tuesday webinar, Building a Parent Nation. There we were introduced to Dr. Suskind's forthcoming book, Parent Nation, as well as the plans and ideas for the Parent Village's tools and resources. The organization Parent Nation seeks to foment community and empower parents, caregivers, and allies through these tools and resources, concretely through the creation and sustainment of parent villages. Since November, a number of parent groups have implemented this model, both in person and virtually. And we're lucky enough to be joined today by leaders from 3 communities who will share their experiences with parent villages in what I know will be a compelling and motivating conversation. I'm now going to briefly introduce our moderator and all of our speakers. And as a reminder, the bios can be accessed in the chat briefly. Next slide, please. John Gompertz, who we will hear from momentarily, is a longtime leader in nonprofits and government organizations devoted to civic engagement and to creating greater opportunity for children and youth. He has served on a wide range of boards, including Food Corps as the chair, Points of Light, Presidio Institute, News Literacy Project, and others. He also works as an executive fellow for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Next slide. Yolie Flores is campaign director for Parent Nation, about which we will hear an update today. Prior to joining the TMW Center, Yolie supported a network of campaign for grade level reading communities. She served on the Los Angeles Board of Education, was CEO of the LA County Children's Planning Council, and director of childcare policy and planning for the city of LA. Dr. Dana Suskind is the co-director of the TMW Center for Early Learning and Public Health at the University of Chicago, as well as professor of surgery and pediatrics and director of the Pediatric Cochlear Implant Program. She is the author of the book, 30 Million Words, Building a Child's Brain, and of a forthcoming book, Parent Nation, which we will hear more about today. Next slide. Sarita Sashington is the Be Strong Family Senior Strategic Relationships Manager and a parent engagement expert. She also manages a robust cafe community of practice, which supports over 3,000 people. She is the author of The Sunken Place, Overcoming Midlife Crisis in Marriage, and the founder of Daddy's Favorite Ministry. Kendra Smiley is the Arizona Statewide Family Engagement Director for the National Center for Families Learning. Her experience includes working in the nonprofit sector for over 12 years, as well as teaching preschool for 6 years. Kendra has also been teaching online for Arizona State University and the Mary Lou Fulton College for the past 6 years. Finally, Rosa Guzman Snyder serves as the Director of Community Development at the National Center for Families Learning. In 2013, Rosa founded the Community Language Cooperative in Denver. She is a lead advocate in the language justice movement, working to dismantle oppressive practices around linguistic services. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to our moderator, John Gompertz. Thank you.
Hi, Hattie. Thank you. Can we put off the slides for a sec now, Sierra? Thanks. Thanks, everybody. And I'm so glad to be a part of this session today. I think it's going to be terrific. And we thank you all for joining. Special thanks, of course, to Hattie and Sierra and Yolie for putting this session together. I think it's going to be terrific. As you know, and as Hattie referred to, parent engagement, parent partnership has been a core part of the campaign for grade level reading since the jump. And Dana, Yolie have been key partners, and it's great to get the opportunity to get an update from them just as they get ready to launch. The campaign was fortunate enough to have Dana and Yolie back in November to give us a little sneak peek, a little preview of what's to come, and what's to come is about to arrive. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Dana to sort of reorient us in what this big venture is and where it's come from and where it's going. And then she is going to turn it over to Yolie, who's going to get much more specific about what's going to happen next and the tools and resources that Hattie referred to. So with that quick introduction, I'm just going to turn it over to Dana and then to Yolie to relocate us and bring us up to date and fill us with energy. Dana, you want to take it away?
John, thank you so much. Can you hear me all right? It is so wonderful to be back. I mean, honestly, when we first presented in the early days around Parent Nation, this day felt very, very far away. So it's just so great to be back with the campaign and all of you all. I want to send out a special shout out to, of course, Ralph Smith, our forever champion, my forever champion, and to Hattie for helping organize this session. We're excited to update you on Parent Nation, but we're especially excited to spend most of our time today talking about the exciting tools and resources that have been created around building a parent village. But the nice thing is it's not theoretical and it's not early days. I mean, it's still early days, but this time you'll actually hear from some of our amazing who beta tested the resources that we developed with the groups of parents across the country. This is a living program that will be iterated by those who use it. I really, we're not an organization, we're an idea that hopefully as time has come that you all have been working for a very long time. thanks in advance, of course, to Kendra Smiley, Rosa, Guzman Snyder from the National Center for Families Learning, and of course, Sarita Sashington from Be Strong Families. These are two of the groups that you're going to be hearing from today. And John Gompertz, thank you for being the master of ceremonies. I really don't want to spend a lot of time because this is not, you heard from me last time, and this is really about, going forward. But I just wanted to, again, share a brief background around the book Parent Nation and how it came to be. And more importantly, what we hope that it manifests in the world through the overall campaign, both the ground and the air game. Just to sort of back it up, for those of you who don't know, I'm a pediatric physician, pediatric cochlear implant surgeon, and my work, I always joke, started in the operating room, seeing that some children weren't allowed to reach their potentials, and really it's based, all my work is based on the power of families and parents to build their children's brains, and the power of talk and interaction, and the importance of protection from toxic stress. And about 7 years ago now, I had a book that came out called 30 Million Words, Building a Child's Brain, which really looked at the neuroscience, because I'm a I'm a translational scientist, how the neuroscience can inform what we do at the individual level, what the neuroscience says that is about allowing all children to thrive. And of course, it's not just about words, it's about the richness of language, the inner nurturing serve and return, and importantly, the toxic protection from toxic stress. And I wrote that book back then, not so much to be used at the individual level, but because I thought that understanding the science could really help, as it did inspire a surgeon to leave the operating room, could inspire those who make policies, all of us, just how important parents and caregivers are, and how policies and society help support them, because I thought it would move it. It didn't. And I moved forward. And despite my promises of not writing another book, I felt compelled to, because of all the things that we're seeing in the world, all the things that I know that you're grappling with. And so I thought, just as the neuroscience form what we do at the individual level, maybe we could use that same frame, that same path forward as a way to imagine what a society looks like that truly puts children and families at the center, that puts healthy development of children, especially in the early years, as the North Star of all that we do. Because then if you do that, everything else falls into place. So that's the origins of Parent Nation. But what was quite clear in my writing and thinking, and just really understanding the history in this country and how we think about these things, that would be a beautiful pathway forward, but it would not be enough to move things forward. That we know we have been building the case. The neuroscience is so strong, but yet we seem strangely stuck. And so, I always joke, as a surgeon, you never want to leave things up to chance. And I thought, what if I partnered with amazing people who are already doing this work? And importantly, my incredible partner, Yolie Flores, and a number of other people on the team. And we started imagining what it would look like to have families bring their voices together. Because families, caregivers, and I don't just mean biologic parents, I mean all of us who care deeply about children and care deeply about parents and caregivers and their important role. There are so many of us. And if we came together across the nation, could that help push things forward? And that was part of, I could go on, and I don't want to go on and on. So I'm going to just stop here and just say that so much of the work that you're going to be hearing about today, the campaign, et cetera, this is our attempt at manifesting what needs to happen. But really, you all are doing this day in, day out, and we couldn't be more thrilled to be partnering with you all. And let's hope that we can break through the noise. We all know this is important. How do we break out of our echo chamber so that everyone listens, and we finally get the supports for children and families that they so deserve. And at this point, I don't want to belabor it. I want to turn it over to my incredible partner, Yolie Flores, who I am just grateful every day to get to work with. Yolie?
Thank you, Dana. It's so good to be back with our colleagues at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. And let me just also say thank you to Hattie, to John, to Sierra, to Sarah, and to our good friend, and yes, our forever champion, Ralph Smith, for having us back. So as Dana said, and as John introduced the conversation for today, we really wanted to come back and give you an update on the work that we've been doing, that we started to share with you back in November. And more importantly, give you a sneak preview into all of the tools and resources that we've developed so that as many of us across the country can bring parents together, can activate their power for all the reasons that Dana just laid out, and to help you see what's available for you, for all of the partners, for our allies across the country to activate the parent power that we need to build this parent nation, to build this idea that parents deserve support. If we're truly going to be true to our words that we believe that all children should have the opportunity to reach their dreams, to reach their full potential. So I'm going to pull up some slides and walk you through where we are. Now, we are launching in just a week and a half, I think, April 26th. So this is a sneak preview of what you'll start to see when we launch. And I do recall that when we came to you in November, when we had the opportunity to first share with you that we shared that we have, of course, the book. The book is our anchor to everything that we're doing, but that we would also be launching a campaign that had both an air game and a ground game component. So I'm going to give you a sneak preview of the air game, and then we're going to spend most of the time on the parent villages, and really it's the panel that's going to make this come to life. So just very quickly on the media campaign, the social impact campaign, which is what we're calling the air game. We have a couple of phases. We're going to kick off phase 1 during that week in April, the week of April 26th, with clips from news segments that are so impactful and that really lift up why parents need support and what it means for the well-being for children. And then we will move on to phase 2 and amplify the voices of parents. But I'm going to show you 3 of the videos that they're very, very short. They're 20, 30-second videos that will be part of our kickoff for the phase 1 of our social impact campaign. So I'm going to play this one first, and this, you're going to recognize this video, but I want you to sort of listen to how we've used the video. And this is JD Pryor, the dad. Many of you met him virtually when you saw this adoring video. We are so thrilled that he's partnering with us to amplify the message of Parent Nation. And we're starting with this video. So let's give a listen.
Did you understand it though? No.
What our nation has, lots of devoted parents. What our nation needs, better ways to support them. Like paid leave for the early days that go too fast. The potential of children depends on support for their parents. It takes a nation, a parent nation.
Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh?
All right, let's go to the next one. Oops, there we go.
Oh my God, they're adorable. So brave.
They are, aren't they? What our nation has, lots of devoted parents. What our nation needs, better ways to support them. like flexible work schedules for moments you can't redo. The potential of children depends on support for their parents. It takes a nation, a parent nation.
And the last one.
Do you like a new room? What our nation has, lots of devoted parents. What our nation needs, better ways to support them. Like affordable housing or the security kids need. The potential of children depends on support for their parents. It takes a nation, a parent nation.
All right, so we're excited about those videos. We will be amplifying the messages that will be similar to what you just saw. And then we'll also have the messages that, are a little bit more painful to hear, but that we know and that we really have to attend to, which is why this idea of a parent nation is so powerful. Whether it's, the large percentage of families that don't get paid parental leave in this nation, or the fact that early childhood education is one of the lowest paying jobs. We've got a number of these, so we'll really use both the aspirations and all of the beautiful ways that we can support parents and why that's so important, and also the issues that we need to get at. I'm going to skip this and then just move us quickly into the parent villages, which is why you're all here, to hear more about how you can be part of the movement, how you can launch your own parent village. If you were not with us back in November, I'm just going to do a quick recap. So as Dana said, we were really looking for ways and strategies and tools and ways to support partners across this country with some tools and resources that would activate parents, that would really mobilize and inspire parents to be part of a movement that would push for a society that better supports parents. So we developed a curriculum, a set of curriculum guides, and I'm going to show you in a minute what those are looking like. But the idea of Parent Village really is about bringing small groups of parents together in community for discussion, conversation, peer support with each other, for learning, but more importantly, to inspire them around this idea of fighting for a parent nation. We have created the curriculum through 4 90-minute sessions. It's very interactive, very engaging. You'll hear from the panel, share their experience. What was very important for us in developing these tools is that they be adaptable, meaning that anyone in community who would want to bring a group of parents together and host a parent village could really adapt the curriculum to meet the needs of those families, to honor the culture, the language, the traditions of the communities which you serve. We'll talk a little bit about that later. There's a full toolkit available for anybody who wants to host a group. It's available in English and in Spanish. It's also available for providing and bringing parents together through a virtual platform or in person. All of the content that we've developed will be available at no cost by downloading the material or online, going to the FedEx Parent Nation portal. We'll talk about that too. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that you have an opportunity to co-brand, add your organization's logo so that the communities that you serve recognize where this is coming from. So we are going to show you the materials that are hot off the press. But before I do that, I wanted to share with you, and I think we were just about to launch the beta testing when we met back in November. And so all the material that we developed, the curriculum, the sessions, the activities have all been beta tested. We were incredibly fortunate to have 5 partner organizations bring parents together to go through the Parent Village curriculum, to go through the experience. and to give us honest, critical feedback, and they all did. You're going to hear from 2 of the groups that hosted and beta tested the villages in just a minute. But you can see here just the variety of groups. One was just a father's group, which was incredibly powerful to hear just from dads. We had a statewide group. We had 2 national groups. We had a group that brought friends and coworkers together. That's the photo at the top with somebody's, this group was hosting their parent village in their backyard. So we found that there are many, many ways that actually work very well bringing parents together, formally, informally. And I'm going to share now with you the materials that, and not our partners today that will be on the panel haven't even seen this material. So I'm excited for them to get to see it as well. So give me just a second and I will find, here we go. Okay. Now you'll get to see what the tools are looking like and how I will talk to you about how you can access all of the material. All right, so I mentioned a toolkit. So if you're interested in hosting a parent village, you would go on the parentnation.org website. And there's a place where you would go to say, I'm interested in hosting a parent village. I'd love all the materials that you have. So you would then get an email, and that email would provide you the links to this toolkit. And the toolkit is in English and in Spanish. And there's one for in-person hosting and for virtual hosting. So you'll have an option of 4 different toolkits. You will find everything you need in this toolkit. So the first time you see a link, and all of these will be live links, is to access the Parent Village Host Guide. And I'll show you what that guide is in just a minute. And I'm gonna go fast, but just to give you an idea. And that guide gives you the background and some frequently asked questions, tips for hosting your parent village, etc. And then if you move on, you'll start to see a slide, one for each of the sessions. It briefly captures so that you get right up front the agenda, the materials that you need. And then you see other links, and it's through these links that you'll access the curriculum guide. All of the materials that you would need for that session will be on that slide. And the same for session 2, session 3, and session 4. And then there's some additional resources that you'll have access to. And you'll see what the goals and outcomes are. And we repeat these in each of the sessions so that you know for each session what the goals are, what the outcomes are, etc. All right, so now this is the Village Host Guide. And here's where you'll get some background information, some frequently asked questions, how the curriculum was developed, and so on. And once you get into the kit and you click on the link for session 1, then you'll get the actual scripted curriculum. And I'm just going to scroll very quickly through it. This is what that looks like. As I said, we also have it in Spanish. So here's the Spanish version of the first session. And this one, if it's got a V, it's for the virtual session. So again, it'll give you the goals, the outcomes, the agenda, the materials that you need, what to do before the session to prepare, and then it's the scripted curriculum. As I said, we also have made this available if you want to bring parents together virtually. So there's a whole setup guide of how to use all the technology so that parents can participate virtually in all of the activities that we've developed. This guide is the guide for the virtual. There's different instructions here because obviously now you're managing, in this case, Zoom, where it talks about muting yourself, about how to pull up the Jamboard, which is what we use for some of the activities. It's one of the tech tools, etc. And I'm going to show you just some of the handouts that are part of the sessions, just so you get to see what they look like and how beautiful they are. We're so fortunate that we've had a great graphic designer Some of you saw the Parent Nation Bingo mock-up that we shared last November. This is one of the final tools. It's a plan of action for your group, and there's a whole activity in session 4 for beginning to think about how that parent village or that group of parents will build a parent nation, will fight for an issue that they want to tackle. This is one of the handouts. It's called a Changemaker handout, and this is part of session 3. So all of these tools, I'm going to stop share now. All of these tools will be available in a few days on the Parent Nation website. We also have a new partnership with FedEx, and FedEx has created a special portal called the FedEx Parent Nation portal, so that anyone who wants the toolkit and wants it printed through FedEx, you don't have to go through FedEx. This is just an opportunity, but you can order it online, and if you're within 30 miles of a FedEx, they will ship it to you for free. And their turnaround time is 2 days. So we're just excited that there's another way that you can access the material. Of course, you can also download them yourself at your organization's, use your organization's printer or your own, or take it to your own print shop. It's all of the content is free, downloadable. The only thing that you would need to cover is the printing. So that's just a quick update on my end. There's lots of excitement about rolling this out. We've had a number of information sessions. I know I went really fast. I'm counting on the fact that many of you were part of the November session, but if you want to go deeper and go through the sessions, get some training, we have information sessions that are ongoing, and we'd be happy to walk you through it, to give you any guidance, to answer any questions. I'll make sure that all of our content information is in the chat. All right, I'm going to stop there. I think I went way over my time, and turn it back to you, John.
Oh, Yolie, that was so much. That was fantastic. Yolie, can I ask you a quick question before we turn to our panel, which is, do you see this happening as an organizational activity, or do you see this happening organically, or either, or both?
Both.
So this is something that an existing organization could deploy, or an inspired person could start on their own. Is that how you're seeing this?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So we've
great.
been connecting with many of our partner organizations who already do parent education, parent leadership, parent advocacy.
Yep.
They can incorporate that into what they're already doing. Maybe they only need what's in session 2, and Bill put that into what they're doing and add it there. It could be a supplement, it could be a complement, it could be a standalone. We wanted to make it very adaptable and flexible.
Perfect. Thanks. And I hope you're going to stand by and be willing to join back in if we want to. With that, I think we're going to ask Rosa and Kendra and Sarita to join us and put on your screens, and we'll start this panel conversation. But Dana and Yolie, that was a spectacular, that was a lot. And your enthusiasm was
Before
fantastic.
you bring the panel on, let me just say, we could not have done this without our partners, and you're going to hear from some of them. We could also not have done this without the Campaign for Grade Level Reading Network. We had several people, state leads and others, that reviewed our material, that gave us the input, that gave us feedback. So I just want to say thank you, because this has been just a dream team effort.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks for that, Yolie. Appreciate that. So do we have Sarita and Rosa and Kendra on?
Yes.
I hope. Good. Terrific. So you all have been leading the way on beginning to implement the Parent Villages idea. And just to follow on what Dana and Yolie talked about, I'm curious, my first question really is why? Rosa, let's start with you. What about this work inspired you and made you think, oh, this is going to propel forward something I already want to do?
Yeah, thanks. Great question, John. So at NCFL, we are working on establishing dynamic and innovative family learning systems. And we do that through family engagement, family leadership, and family literacy. But with that, we understand that it requires authentic parent and parenting adult voice at the center. So we know that in order to move anything forward, to establish these systems that we want to do where everything is coordinated and systems are aligning to family needs, we need to ensure that those families are the drivers, the key influencers, and the decision makers of everything we do. And because we already have this mission in our heart, in our DNA, Parent Nation just seemed like a perfect fit. We understood that we have some tools at our disposal, but using Parent Nation and the parent villages was just the right match at the right time. Looking at ways that we can help families think about systems and supports in a different way. So for NCFL, it just aligned with our mission. It aligned with what we're trying to do. It aligned with centering families, positioning them as key influencers of the work.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to come back to you on some of that
Sure.
core implementation stuff. But Sarita, I'm curious, the same question. It's really the why question for you. Why did this speak to you, and why did you decide to be one of the leaders in implementing this this idea?
John, much like not much different from what Rosa shared, Be Strong Families, we're known across the country as the cafe people, and it's one of our signature products, but we use it to promote parent leadership. And because our cafes were created for parents, by parents, and with parents, the most important part for us was having the parent voice be heard. And so that model is driven by parents. So we're all about making sure that parents have a seat at the table. You know, our motto is sort of the nothing about us without us when it comes to parents. And so this was a great opportunity to be able to have parents be a part of something from the ground up, to share their voice and not have it be something that they were added to as an afterthought later on. Like, oh my gosh, there's an opportunity for parents to really be on the ground floor of something, where people really want to hear from them about what it is to engage parents, and how this can be effective with families and create impact. So for us, it was a natural fit. It also lined up with our values, of equity, of political equity, parents being at the table, but also it spoke also to economic equity, because you know, we also compensated the parents for their time. So for that, it hit all marks for us. It also touched a little bit on social equity for us, because we're all about, managing with parents when they're going through. And so even though we did this program for like the 5 sessions, we had parents that had some challenges to attend, and we were able to support them socially through that so that they could still go through the process. So for us, it matched our values, it matched who we are as an organization regarding parent engagement and equity. So it was a huge win for us, and the parents enjoyed it, and they were so grateful for the opportunity.
That's great. Okay, I'm going to come back to you on some of that, Sarita, because you said a whole bunch of interesting things. But Kendra, I wanted to touch with you on this question of the why.
Sure. Thanks, John. So I was really excited because I heard about this through my colleague, Rosa. She reached out and said, hey, is this something you'd be willing to participate in Arizona? So in Arizona, I lead the statewide Family Engagement Center project, which is a United States Department of Education grant, which includes a collective impact approach with several partners. And through those partnerships, and part of this project, we are charged with creating a parent leadership council. So we recruit parents from across the state to really have their voices be heard, to be work alongside us, as well as really helping us guide the direction of this project. And so when Rosa shared this with me, I thought, this is so perfect because it aligns with everything that we want to do with our parents and what our parents have been asking for. So it just naturally fit into what we were doing. And I'm excited to, when we start to get into the weeds of what we did, to share that with you.
Excellent. I love that. Sarita, I want to just jump back to you for a second, because what you said I thought was really interesting about the way in which the parent village approach can at the same time offer support and solidarity for parents, which is certainly needed, but also leadership opportunities. So you think of leadership opportunities as sort of this rocket ship, we're gonna, but you think also about the support and solidarity. So, and particularly for families who may have been marginalized historically, whether it's economically, residentially, or even politically, right? So I'm curious about that mix for you of solidarity, support, and leadership opportunities with sort of the equity lens. Can you say more about that?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, Be Strong Families, we created we're the creators of the Parent Cafe. And the Parent Cafe is a way for us to touch on all of those things, on this, both the social equity, the political equity, and the economic equity. And we do that because in parent cafes, the leadership is in that the parents develop the process, and then they're a part of the entire process. So they aren't an afterthought. They help to create the whole model, which is now internationally known. That process that was created for parents is now an international process. We just trained over in Wales last week a group of people to be trained on cafes. We're in Canada, we're in Guam, the Philippines, and Kenya, with this process that was created for parents, by parents, and with parents. During that time, and it is still our practice, we're now celebrating 10 years, and we started off compensating parents for helping us be successful in this process. So it wasn't something that we assumed they should be a part of and just be grateful because we're helping them to, we're helping them to better their families or strengthen their families. It was, no, you're here just like everybody else, so we need to compensate you for what you do. And we continue that. So now we have a national team of parents from all over the country who host cafes, and they're ambassadors for us, and we help them with things they want to do in community and support them there. But we also compensate them for their time. And then the social, anytime anyone who knows and works with parents knows that it's really easy to be all gung-ho with parents when they are, acting the way we want them to act, or they're being the model parent. It's like, oh my God, now we love you, we want you to be a part. But it takes a little more to do that when they encounter life's challenges, and they can't be as present as we'd like them to be, or they can't be, or they have meltdowns, or whatever the case is. We just need to be there to support them. So when Parent Nation, it was the same. It was an opportunity to do that again with this national group of parents who are, they show up and they lead all the time with various things for us. And then they also sit on our board of directors. They help to create curriculum for us. They influence our curriculum. They help with the decks. They're just co-creators. They're truly partners in the true sense of the word, which for us is authentic and true parent engagement. On all of those lenses, because we really believe if we were going to have good parent engagement or successful parent engagement, that we put our money where our mouth is. Where our money, put your money where your mouth is. We believe in that motto. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. Well, to follow on that, Kendra, I would ask you, it seems like one of the things that's particularly appealing about the Parent Nation and the parent villages and the material that Yolie showed us is that it's a strong rubric with a fair amount of structure, but also a high degree of adaptability so that it can be adjusted for particular communities, particular audiences, and people can feel like they're not just doing something that somebody else has written, but that they can be one of the authors, in effect, of the work. Can you talk a little bit about this structure, but also adaptability?
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that we, meaning my colleague and I, Sherry Hudson, who helped me facilitate these sessions, recognized was once we received all the materials, it was so easy for us to really pick it up and adapt it to our community. So as I had mentioned before, we recruited families from across the state of Arizona, from each of our local education agencies, as well as our Birth of Five partners, Southwest Human Development and Make Way for Books. And we decided that since everything kind of lightened up with COVID, we were going to bring folks together, which was amazing to have people in person to really go through this curriculum, because we felt that it was so interactive. Instead of talking at folks, we were working with the parents. And you could see when we were taking them through it, they would just light up, like they really want to hear what we have to say. Like, this isn't just another one of those things that is describing, come and learn about this. This was us learning from them, which was one of the things that really inspired us. Another way that we adapted it was, the 4 sessions, traditionally the hour-and-a-half sessions could be done standalone, but since we were pulling folks from across the state, we did 2-day-long sessions. So we met with parents for an hour-and-a-half in the morning, we broke for lunch, and then we did the session 2, et cetera, et cetera. And that seemed to really work for parents as well, because we had those times in between the sessions, like when we were eating lunch, for them to really gain that sense of community amongst each other, which really shone through multiple times. We also made sure that we had interpretation services available. We had devices that we had a lot of Spanish-speaking families, so we had interpretation. The materials all came in Spanish. We were able to print those off as easily as we needed to make more copies if that was necessary. And I think the biggest thing about the adaptability of it was, as we would go through it, if we felt like, okay, this might be a session, this might be something that, maybe if we did this first and then that. So Yolie gave us that flexibility, which was really, really nice. And Yolie was on every single one of our sessions, which was amazing. So she got to be a part of it. And when we share the slides, you'll be able to see when we did the graduation part, she was right there on the screen with us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Let's talk about, that was really helpful. Let's talk about what it takes to get started. Let's say there are people who are watching who catch your enthusiasm, love the idea. What's it take, Rosa, to get started with this Parent Villages stuff? How did you start, and where would you suggest others might like to start?
Great question. So I think securing your partners, knowing that it is, it's making sure that this is something that your families want and need. I think, not ever coming in with that assumption that this is, everybody's gonna, particularly like this. I believe they will, because it's so adaptable, but just making sure that you set that ground, that trust families first. I think in Kendra's case, the recruiting and identifying those families was key, but I would love to just kind of focus a little bit on kind of setting that stage and the inclusive practices that need to happen in order to make that happen. So Kendra mentioned interpretation, and rather than just taking it, just offering interpretation just at the very minimal level, we wanted to make sure that folks were able to engage in what we call the language of their heart. So I was so struck by what Sarita said about how we love to, engage families when we feel like they are engaging in the same way that we are, and everything just seems like to flow and everything's normal. But really, when we talk about equity, it's about having those uncomfortable spaces where not everyone, particularly folks that are staff or paid to do this work, where not everyone feels comfortable. And so what we did is we purposely facilitated pieces in Spanish to ensure that everybody wore a headset, not just our Spanish speakers,
Nice.
but everybody
Nice.
wears a headset,
Smart.
right? And
Yeah.
set that stage that, you know what, speaking in the language of your heart is not only allowed, but it's welcomed and it's celebrated here. So that going back to that premise of not only what you say, but how you say it needs to be valued and validated in our spaces. And so, you know, setting those spaces up, I think is truly important. Setting up the inclusive practices, transportation, food, childcare, all of those things that are needed to hold, like build that container to bring families in.
So I'm curious how all of you think about recruiting families to get started. You know, your core group, your initial adopters. Sarita, you know, you've got experience through the whole Be Strong effort, but when you think about parent villages, how do you think about who to start with and how to find those people who you will start with?
That's an interesting question. We started with our national team,
Mm-hmm.
and to those, when we brought the possibility or the opportunity, shared it with them, we just simply asked them who wanted to be a part of a groundbreaking process that would allow their voices to be heard, different from other parent curriculums they had been familiar with in the past. And they jumped on it. And we showed them, we took a little clips of what was shared with us just to sort of pique their interest. Like, look at this one, you know, this change maker thing, this bingo thing, they were like, oh, this sounds really good. Is this something that's happening right now? Like, is that something we can be a part of? And so that's really how we promoted it. And then we said, oh no, this is something that you can help develop. These are some ideas that are out there. You can be a part of this. And they jumped on it. And so we were tasked with getting a small group of 8 to 10, I want to say. And so those that signed up, and we have a group of 30. And we had a waiting list, so if anybody wanted to drop off, then we can add them, but we tried to stay true to what was asked of us. And so we did have a nice showing. They were all excited, but we took little clips of what was shared with us and presented it to the team. And, you know, so we didn't just assign people, but we asked them who wants to be a part of this and use that to sort of promote it and build their interest.
It's interesting. I'm curious because we think about the kid who sits in the front row and raises their hand, and they're parent versions of that kid too. But you're speaking particularly about equity and trying to create the environment in which people who aren't usually invited into leadership roles are invited. So striking that balance of, yeah, of course you want a coalition of the willing, but the willing might be made up entirely of parents like the kid in the front of the class with his hand up all the time. So that's why I'm pressing a little about how do you find the starter group that isn't just the coalition of the most enthusiastic or the usual suspects. Kendra, how do you think about that issue?
So a lot of the things that Sarita said really resonated with how we talked about it amongst our families. So in our statewide Parent Leadership Council, we have about 25 parents that participate, and we presented it to them during the meeting. And we just said, you know, this is an opportunity that you guys can help inform the work. Your voices are just as important as anyone, even the author of this book. And she wants to know what you guys think about this. Like, this isn't something that is being scribed. It's really like, we want to have your input. And much like Sarita, you know, when we told them only 8 to 10 could do it, like, we were getting messages in the chat box like, can I be on the waiting list? Please, please.
That's
so
fantastic.
We, we over recruited just because, or we enrolled 12, And then we ended up with 8 because, you know, life happens. A couple of parents that morning either had COVID, still the transitions, but I think one of the things about the curriculum that really sold the parents was the 3rd session, the Changemaker activity, when it was an activity about self-reflection, really, and helping them see that this isn't anything that they're not capable of. These are skills that they already have, that they're all helpers, they're organizers, they're you know, all of that really kind of spiked their interest. Like, okay, I don't have to learn anything. I just be myself. And we were like, yeah, like we are all parents and we're all in this together. And I think that was something too that really resonated with our parents, that the woman that presented with me, you know, we were telling our own personal stories too. Like, I'm a single parent. I've raised my daughter. I've always felt like I needed a village. And we all as parents want best for our kids. And we talk to them in such a way that like we could see their faces light up. And it just continued the longer we went through these sessions. And I'll just tell one quick story. So
Please.
after we facilitated the 4 sessions, one of our schools, the psych coordinator said, "You're never going to believe what this parent did after participating." We were like, "What? Tell us." She created her own PowerPoint and presented it, what she had learned from Parent Nation, back to her families and her family literacy model at her school. And we have been all of the parents now amongst these communities that we're in across the state want to bring this to their schools. So and we didn't even ask them to do that. And so she's now a part of all of our, you know, our parent leadership conversations. And so it was just very inspiring to see what parents did as a result of after participating.
Can I weigh in, John?
Please, please, please.
I just wanted to say, and I'm sure it sounds like because Kendra and Rosa seem like kindred spirits. When we talk about the part of getting the parents ready, you mentioned those who are maybe not, who are, you know, aren't the ones that are always raising their hands. We did have to nudge some of our quiet people, but what we said to them, what we shared was that we would be with them every step of the way, and we weren't going to like just turn them over to, you know, Parent Nation, and they weren't being thrown into anything without being briefed ahead of time, that we would be there for them. And for me, that is another part of the political equity, because so often parents get tossed into situations, you know, they're asked to, can you lead up this, or can you be a part of this, but they don't know what to do, and they don't, you know, they go in sort of blind, just like, I don't know, and their voices, they don't feel confident enough to speak up because, you know, because they weren't prepared in advance. They were just sort of thrown in as this afterthought sort of thing that we have, or, you know, that agencies tend to have. So even that political part was, we're going to be with you, and we're going to make sure that you feel comfortable in this, so that you don't feel afraid, because your voice matters. And so we wanted them to know that we always want to hear your voice. It doesn't matter if it's a cafe, if it's something else, parent voices are important. And so we want to make sure that you know that. So that was for and we had some, you know, some very quiet ones who were, you know, hesitant about, they wanted to do it, but, you know, we'll let everybody else go first. And we're like, no, you can do this too. Like, your voice matters, even your quiet voice, it matters. So I just
Rosa, I see you not smiling and nodding, and I want to ask you for your reaction. But before I do that, I also want to just encourage people who are listening to post any questions in the Q&A, because we're going to turn soon to questions from the audience. And Hattie is watching that Q&A box, and will be ready to pose some of the questions that people have, because I don't have every question. I know other people in communities have questions. But Rosa, let's come back to why you're smiling and nodding your head.
Yeah, thanks, John. So like when I'm listening to Sarita speak about kind of that equity factor of engaging families that maybe don't typically engage in this way, engage in policy work, or you know, are positioned in in places of where they're making decisions or influencing, policymakers. That to me speaks again to the flexibility and adaptability of the parent villages and this model. So when I, think about parent advocacy, and when I think about families going to their state legislator to lobby or to do any of this work, what immediately comes to mind are white middle class affluent parents, right? It's not typically, I don't think about, communities of color always doing this work. And so to me, this points to the adaptability and the sensitivity that, this model was able to embark and take the things that maybe as communities of color engage in this work and engage in policy or, making decisions, we're able to adapt that to make them feel comfortable and to make them engage in those ways and feel like they can do this work. So to that point, Sarita, I love that flexibility and adaptability, and that kind of like flipping it on its head that, it can be communities of color who are leading the charge.
Absolutely.
So again, I'm curious for questions from the audience, but I'm really interested to ask all three of you, all activities that we engage in as human beings, whether individual activities or group activities, a positive feedback loop is what makes you continue to do it, whether that's an exercise program or a reading, you set your reading goals. So what's the positive feedback loop that parents experience that makes them think, oh, this is fantastic, more, like, give me, I'm ready to do more. I'm ready to learn more as they go through this process. Is it the solidarity with other parents, or is it the impact they observe? What's that positive feedback loop that keeps people coming back and wanting more? Sarita, what's your thought on that?
I think it was a solidarity. There were, believe it or not, there were a few tears in our training as we reviewed the curriculum, because they saw that they were already making a difference in the community. And much to what Kendra mentioned about the world changers, when that came, they were just like, oh wow, like I am doing these things, I am, blah blah blah. And I think also the thought of being able to advocate in that way. So like Rosa said, you don't usually see a lot of people of color anyway. That's not what's shown in the media.
Yep.
It's people of color advocating because they've been advocating a long time. However, this group of parents were excited about the the change maker. They were excited to see some of the resources they knew about, but also some of the resources they didn't know about across the country. They were just like, "Oh my goodness, that's in my neighborhood. I never knew," or or "Oh my God, I did know that was in my neighborhood. This is so great. Do we get a copy of these? Of this." Resources when they were shared in the curriculum, and then them being able to share, because we're cafe people, we share a lot. That's how we communicate, is through our heart to heart. So it's easy for us to take our professional hat and just be able to share heart to heart. So our team is very familiar with that. However, in this space, it was a different aspect because they were seeing what they could do in their community, first recognizing what they already do and giving voice to that they didn't know was, like one person was like, I garden and then I take vegetables to my neighbors. And I was like, that's amazing. That is like, you're doing the work. Like, you're doing the work, you're supporting other families, and without even knowing it. And she was like, oh, I guess I do. And then she was like, somebody else was like, I knit hats for military soldiers in the wintertime. What? And they send them out. We're like, what? So even us, we've worked with this team for about 2 years now, and we were learning things that we didn't know and that they thought weren't valuable.
Mhm.
And they
Interesting.
found out that it had a lot of value to it, and that we needed to do more of that. And there was a way that they could do more of that, and 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 advocate for support to doing more of the things they love in their community. So that was huge for them.
That's great. I love that story. Thank you. Yolie, I want to invite you to rejoin us on screen as well as I ask this last question, and then I invite Hattie to start thinking about what we want to pose from people who are watching, which is, how do you think about success? Like what's winning here from sort of a small scale, and then also from a more formal sort of assessment evaluation point of view. So Kendra, let's start with you. How do you think about whether this is quote unquote working? What does that mean? What are you looking for in terms of outcomes?
Sure. So I think for us, how this aligned with our Parent Leadership Council was we were really looking for a space for parents to be able to share their wants and needs and create a sense of community. So when we started to do the Parent Village Nation curriculum on session 1, as Sarita was saying, we had tears. Like some of the questions through that curriculum really prompted people to really dig deep as to, they want the best for their kids. And it's emotional, and it's challenging, and it's hard. And I think for us to see the win after taking those parents through was by the end, when they had to create their own projects and really talk about what they were going to do, their whole affect had changed. You could tell that they were more confident. Again, going back to that change maker activity, when I think building their self-esteem to be their child's first and best teacher, and to take what they learned back to their schools or back to their community organizations and really want to share this and empower other parents. I think that's what really spoke volumes to us.
That's fantastic. Rosa, I'm curious how you think about that same question. What is success? What are you looking for? Kendra talked about sort of efficacy. It sounded like to me, people with a greater sense of their own power and as parents and as a community of people like that. What's your thought about this question of success?
Sure. So one of the things that I just want to quickly come back to is that, like, what are those feedback, that loop of how we know we're being successful? And I think about, building community. Like, to me, that is the basis of making sure that this work is successful, is that sense of solidarity, that sense of community. That is where the power happens. That's where we really see families come together. So that community aspect. The next is the content, knowing that for me, this content is strong. Like, families won't feel like bored through it or any of those things. So community, content. And the third thing is that call to action, giving family and parenting adults very concrete next steps of how they can enact their advocacy, how they can enact, some of that found power that they've discovered collectively. So kind of building on those three things: community, content, and that call to action. That is where I feel is where we'll see some changes in policy, where we'll see increased campaigns. We know that any major movement, going back to the civil rights movement, any major movement always happens when those who are most impacted by the issues are taking the lead in the center of the solutions. And I do want to also just make a quick note. I absolutely believe that families, communities of color, BIPOC communities have been leading this charge. But to Sarita's point, they don't always get, the media attention. We typically see, quite the opposite. And so I, want to acknowledge and lift up that BIPOC families have been doing this work for a tremendously long time and doing it incredibly well. So yeah, those are the three things.
Well said. Well said. Yolie, what's your reaction? I mean, you helped shape this thing, but also left lots of space for it to be shaped by others or reshaped by others. So when you think about success, what are you looking for? And then I'm curious also on the more formal evaluation kind of.
Yeah, well, our colleagues, and I'm loving the enthusiasm and the excitement. Thank you so much for sharing the experience and just how you made every one of the sessions so authentic for parents. And that goes to what Rosa said about building community. So the curriculum and just this venture around parent villages to push for a society that better supports parents has 3, maybe 4 key outcomes. First, and that's Rosa nailed it, fostering community. So the idea is that we want to see parents, all parents from all walks of life, rural, urban, Black, brown, Asian, middle income, low income, all parents, to see that we can form a strong community. Mm-hmm. And the second related outcome is forging collective identity. So, we've got lots of siloed efforts happening in this country, specifically around children and family issues. We know that lots of people are working hard and valiantly on X policy, X issue. What we haven't done so well is really forge the collective identity of all parents. Parents share some of the most powerful things. One is all parents love their children. All parents are mostly, maybe not the top 1%, but maybe are struggling, and all parents need support. And that commonality is what could help us, and that forging that collective identity could help really elevate the power of parents to make change.
Okay, so we bring people together. 2 is collective identity as parents. You could be lots of other things in this life. We all are, but you're also assuming an identity as parents together. Yeah. Okay. Third,
essential is elevating our expectations of society. So okay. That cuts across everything that we talk about in every session, because in this country, because we're such an individualistic society, a pick yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, our expectations of society as parents are very low. We just take it on and we're responsible and we've got to figure it out, and I'm on my own and I've just got to deal with it. And it doesn't have to be that way. So we want to explore with parents this idea that it doesn't have to be this way, and that we should expect more from society to support parents if we truly want children to succeed in this world.
So I saw a question go by about overall vision in the chat. I think you just nailed that question, Yolie. That was fantastic.
Because the last one, we can't get to the last one outcome, which is inspiring people to fight for change, if we don't have that expectation that we deserve support from society.
Yep.
So those are the 4 things that we're trying to get at with this curriculum.
Excellent.
But the big picture is we need what AARP has for seniors. Mm-hmm. We want to build a massive movement of parents leading, but obviously lots of other allies and partners and leaders that can become a powerful lobbying force for children and families. So we know that, we're not the first ones to be talking about this. There've been lots of efforts. We want to learn from others. We want to build on that. We want to be part of that. But at the heart, that is where we're going.
Outstanding. And what are you looking for, Yolie, in evaluation of early progress? What are the markers you're looking for?
So all of what I just shared, we in the toolkit, there's a feedback form.
Okay.
And that's going to be how we will evaluate whether we're meeting the mark, whether we need to do something more, better, different.
Great.
So we're really going to rely on the field, on those that host parent villages to constantly give us feedback. And we'll start tracking. And obviously, if there's like 1,000 parent villages happening in this country before the end of the year, we're going to know we're on the right track.
Great.
I have a feeling about this. In just the time that we've been doing webinars, we have had 2,000 people reach out to us to say, I want to know more. I need to learn.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Great. Hattie, I want to turn to you for some questions. I know we're getting short on time, but everybody's got so much to say and it's so interesting. So
well, hopefully we'll get a little bit more of that from some of our questions.
Thanks.
So a few questions have come through. We talked a little bit about the outcomes and the kind of overarching goal and vision, but I also wanted to kind of synthesize a couple questions in here about next steps. So Rosa, maybe we could begin with you in terms of, in your experience in the sort of beta testing phase of the parent villages. How do you see parents' confidence and abilities to continue on to this sort of larger goal of advocacy work and policy work after completing these sessions?
So I think that we need to look at parent villages and parent nation not as an endpoint, but as a launching point, right? So this is where the work begins. This is where you have the tools and, going back to Yolie's point of just that awareness. To me, that general awareness of, yes, we deserve better. Yes, as families, we're struggling, like as parents, we're struggling, like we deserve better. To me, that's the launch. That's where you start seeing it's that kind of getting revved up of, oh my gosh, like we don't have the supports, or I came back to work, when my baby was 4 weeks old because I didn't have paid leave. Like sharing those stories to me is what's going to make an impact and allow other folks to say, yeah, like let's partner with an organization that is already working on paid leave. Who are the key players? And then to me, that launching point and how NCFL then fits in is that is then helps kind of build in our asset mapping or root cause analysis that then we are able to take from there and say, okay, who's already working on this? How do we power map? How do we move from here to here? So I don't necessarily think that this is the endpoint, but I think it's a launch of kind of an advocacy effort.
Absolutely. I really like that conceptualization of it as a launch pad rather than the end goal. Kendra, I wanted to turn to you. In terms of one of the questions is asking about next steps after session 4. So thinking about what Rosa just said about having this be more of a launch pad and or a launching point, and some of what you shared about the parents who wanted to bring this back to their schools. What is an example of what concrete next steps might look like for parents who participate in these parent villages?
Sure. So actually last Monday, we pulled all the parents back together from our Parent Leadership Council, and we had the parents that participated in the Parent Nation present back to them. And so our natural next step is these parents all want to go through it, and they all want to be trained in it, and they, excuse me, and they want to bring it back to their communities. And then from there, our original group that went through Parent Nation villages, they really want to start acting upon their next steps. And so one of the things that they really focused on after completing was how do they get more involved in their school parent association? So how do they get time in front of their superintendent? How do they be able to make change on certain things that they see are challenging, or red tape, as they called it during our sessions? Being that time really to get their superintendents, to get their principals to really hear their voices on certain items or certain things that they themselves have been challenging with. So those are our immediate next steps that we will be taking here in Arizona.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to remind everybody as we continue on with our Q&A, the poll is available. So if all of the attendees would help us out by filling this out, that would be great. I do want to keep moving along with some of the questions. Sarita, I'll bring this to you. I have kind of a bookend question. So first, we have somebody who asked about encouraging BIPOC families, but also I'd like to add maybe lower income families into, how do we encourage them into participating in the parent villages and parent nation? And then we have another question that if you'd like to answer, I can open it to everybody, is how do we prevent these, or have we started thinking about how to not have these parent villages be weaponized, to quote the question in the Q&A, and how do we make sure that these aren't being used sort of counterintuitively or to push back against what the initial intention is. So to start out with, how do we encourage BIPOC families as well as lower income folks to be part of this initiative and get their kids reading on grade level?
So I'll answer that, and I'll also address, there was another question there regarding the how long or how much time, flexibility or something like that. And so what I would say the best way to get, I won't even limit it to just BIPOC families, right?
Sure.
Because this is a curriculum that's like for us, you know, by us or with us, where parents' voice are at the lead, the best type of advertising for any situation is word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why it's so important to have parents as a part of this. And just like what Kendra said, they pull the parents together and then ask, right? And so if you want to continue to get more people, especially those who may be resistant, who, you know, have a different idea, sometimes they have things that stop them, you know, like bad experiences or things like that, where they don't want to be involved. Well, the best way to do that is to have other parents successfully go through the parent nation, and then them to go out and tell with parents, this is great, or share their experience. When it's created as a great experience, they have a good time. It's not, there isn't even a push for it. They just will immediately go out and share with other parents how much they loved it. And those parents will then come inquiring as to how they can also be a part. And in regards to, you know, time frame for parents, is it 4 hours? Is that too long? The beauty of this, the parent nation and parent villages, is that, again, it's flexible. And so do what works for your parents. My suggestion, or my best practice, is always to ask the parents what works for them. Is 4 hours good? Will you come to something that's 4 hours long? And if it isn't, if they say they only do 2 hours and that's what they can do, then do it. If they say 1 hour, work it out so that the parents feel supported and they feel like, oh, you know what? Okay, I can. Because if we're hardcore, life happens. And then if they can't make it for those 4 hours, you shouldn't, as a provider, not want to feel like, oh, these parents, they just don't want to come. They just didn't feel like it. Well, if you survey them to find out the best times and the best length for them, you're going to have great success. And there was a third question about how do you stop it from being weaponized. I wish I knew. I wish I had the answer, and maybe someone else has a better answer, Rosa or Kendra. So I don't know.
Yolie, I'm curious. I'm going to jump in
We've
for a
actually
second.
been thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the mid-sized elephant in this particular Zoom room, right? Is we've heard a lot about parent engagement recently, and we haven't loved everything we've heard or what people are advocating about. And so how do you see at sort of this global level, the work of Parent Nation and Parent Villages
first of all,
as an antidote?
I hope that our work helps to reframe what we mean when we want parent power and parent voice at the table. It is not to be divisive. It is not to engage in culture wars. You know, we're putting some guardrails around as best we can, and we have in the norms that get adopted in session 1, that, you know, our conversation, this group, this space is very specifically to engage around this framework of what the brain science is telling us, what children need, what parents need to succeed, how society needs to be responsive and be a better partner to parents. That's the conversation we're having here. And we coach the facilitator through the guide to simply say, if, you know, other issues come up, you can just say that's for another conversation at another time at another place. And so we're hoping, we can't control everything, but we are hoping that those guardrails will help, and that it's through our insistent focus on this idea of a society that better supports parents for the well-being of children, for their early development, that actually this narrative can become the prominent narrative of what all the other noise that's going on.
Great. Back to you, Hattie. And I'm alert to time. So let's see if we have one more good question we can respond to.
Yeah, thanks so much. Everyone has talked about equity in some way. And one thing that we've heard about is offering the materials in both English and Spanish. Yolie, is there any look to the future in terms of having the parent villages tools and resources available in other languages?
You know, we are getting that question more and more, and that says something to me very powerful, that, you know, this is something that parents from every culture, every language can benefit from, that are eager and hungry for this idea of activating parent power. So we started with Spanish and English, and we're launching both at the same time. We didn't privilege one or the other. And we are going to look for resources for translation in as many languages. It is a resource question. I did see somebody in the chat said that would be interested in offering support to translate. I don't know if it was in Chinese or another, so please call me. We're going to be looking for as many partners. And personally, and Dana too, we want to make this as available to every community. I want to stress the importance of adaptability. And somebody actually mentioned Native tribes. So if a tribal community takes this on, and we know that in some tribal communities, prayer and chanting is a way to bring a group together, start with that. Start with whatever values your families, honors them, their culture, their language, because that's the beginning of what Rosa said. That's how you create community. That's how you create trust. That's how you create the sense that I am worthy of giving you my time to be in this room. And every parent is worthy of that. So there's lots of ways. We do want to keep the structure and the focus, but we want to invite you to apply this in the way that best honors families, and that will move us to be the society that we need to be for young children and families.
Great, thank you. And I know we're not going to be able to get to every single question, but I did want to have one more point to kind of end on a high note. I wanted to ask Sarita, Rosa, and Kendra a memorable moment, a positive memorable moment from your personal experience in this initiative. So Sarita, we'll start with you, and then we went to Rosa, and then finally Kendra as kind of our closing thoughts here.
Okay, a memorable session. I guess for me, the one that stands out the most is the one that I shared earlier about the parents. They were feeling like a little sort of overwhelmed when we first started the curriculum. And then to see all the light bulbs come on during the third session and the change makers, and they really felt so excited and so I don't know, grounded in their own value. If I could say, it's like, oh, I am doing some good work, and this is me, and I see myself here. And so it was really those moments for me were like everything, because I was tearing up listening to them just get excited about seeing themselves, in this way, seeing themselves in the new light. So for me, that was probably my most memorable, because one person was almost, they were, and then in that conversation is when I knit military caps. I'm taking groceries to my people. I do this and I do that. And they started sharing all these great ways that they were already working in their communities. And for me, it was just like, oh my God, I didn't even know you're doing all this stuff. And this is amazing. And I'm so grateful. And I need to go do more in my community. That's why I left there from talking to the parents in that session was like, oh, I need to go do some more stuff because I'm not doing enough.
Well, that's creating the space for that and being present for that sounds really wonderful. Rosa, what's a memorable moment for you?
Thanks. So very quickly, like one of the activities that I was kind of nervous about was the big shift activity because of like growing up, as Mexican immigrant parents, there's always this narrative around like you have to do more, like it's not the government's responsibility to care for you. Like that was the narrative that was instilled. It's to me that shift of who is tasked with this. Is it institutions or is it individuals? I was really nervous about that. I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to actually work out? Like, are people really going to get, and this speaks to like the strength of the content, going back to that. But the fact that families were able to like look at this very objectively and see like, hey, like there are supports lacking for families, like currently for parents, I think was so impactful for me because I, like, not to say that I trust it, but I was like really nervous about it. I'm like, is it going to have the adverse effect? Like, is it going to give us the other opposite? And like, we just need to do more. We need to pull ourselves up. Like, that's what I was nervous about, but it did what it was intended to do. So to me, that was super memorable.
Yeah, kind of recognizing the limitations that exist, but also what are people already doing and already capable of to address those limitations.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks. And Kendra.
So I think I've mentioned it a couple of times. It was really the changemaker activity. And what really resonated, and, myself as well as Sherry, who was facilitating, when we were on a break, we could see parents like talking to each other, like, okay, when we all get together, I'll be the organizer, you're the helper. And so it was just really cool to see them actually taking what they had just taken part in and actually taking steps and thinking about what they were going to do next. We were like, yes.
Right. And sort of using some of the brain science behind it that Yolie and Dana had talked about, and seeing how that organically then takes shape after participating. Wonderful. Well, I know that we're running low on time here, so I will have the contact information for everybody who participated today will be in the follow-up. John, I'll turn it back to you if you'd like to close it out.
Great. Happy. Thank you to everybody, to all the participants, to all the audience and the people who posted questions, to Hattie for helping organize this whole thing. Very good, very energizing session. Just a big appreciation. And as you see on the screen, we have a couple of new sessions coming up. So we hope people will join for that. And with that, I think we'll close out today with just an enormous thanks to everybody who participated. And we'll see you all soon.
Thank you
all.
Thanks all.